Good morning, everyone. I am SuperDerek, and it's time for your JRPG weekly update. Sorry, it's been a little while, but we've got a lot to cover, and we're not going to cover everything since the last JRPG update, because that would take a really long time. Instead, I'm going to just fill this episode, or this instance, with just the stuff that happened this week, because trust me, thanks to that little Nintendo Direct, we got a lot to cover. This is going to be pretty full. But before we get to any of that, there's actually kind of a strange sort of two-part news that I'm going to talk about. And the first is that Ni no Kuni is getting their own movie, their own animated anime-style movie. And not really much else is known at this time, unfortunately, as is the sort of way that a lot of these Japanese announcements go. I've noticed this. A lot of Japanese announcements and teasers really just say like, hey, we're making a thing, and that's it. That's all that they tell you. And that just really kind of keeps people like me wanting more details, obviously, because they gave you none. Anyways, Ni no Kuni is getting an animated movie, which is pretty cool. I do have some reservations. I do really hope that that Studio Ghibli is involved in this, as much as I'm not really a huge fan of Miyazaki, and I've mentioned this before, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be unhappy with me for saying that. As much as I'm not a huge fan of Ghibli, I feel like it would only really make sense for them to be involved in this. And I think that would be the only way to do this justice for all the fans of Ni no Kuni. And the other hesitation that I sort of have over here on this is that Ni no Kuni is a pretty long game. It's going to be kind of hard to fit all that into, what, an hour and a half? As a fan of many a book series, I've noticed that a lot of, these stories, and I feel like JRPGs they have a lot in common with books. A lot gets, cast to the wayside, and obviously, these aren't meant to be replacements for the original experience of reading the book or playing the game, but it's going to be really hard, I think, to make something that's going to please many of the fans. So, knock on wood. I really hope that they try to do this game justice. And for you Ni no Kuni fans out there, what do you think? Is this going to be something that you're going to be interested in? Or is this sort of like one of those situations where it's like, but why? And as a follow-up to that, because apparently JRPG movies were in short supply, apparently Dragon Quest V is getting an animated movie as well. This one's going to be done in CG though. But again, they're going to have to leave out so much to just cram this into like a 90-minute experience. Honestly, you would think that at this point, Square Enix would be like, no, we're done with movies. But apparently not. Who even knows if these are coming to the States or not? And if they do, maybe we'll only get them subbed. Whatever. Anyways, let's move on to something else. For those of you who haven't been paying full attention, Kingdom Hearts 3 has recently come out. Unfortunately for me, I haven't made my way through all the Kingdom Hearts series, so I'm going to be reviewing that eventually, as soon as I finish reviewing several other Kingdom Hearts games. We will get there eventually, but anyways, in the time since Kingdom Hearts 3 has come out, it has sold over 5 million copies. That's a lot of copies. That's actually really good. It's not massive numbers. I mean, it's really good. To put this in perspective, within 2 weeks of Red Dead Redemption going live, going on sale, selling, words. Since it came out, within 2 weeks, sold 17 million copies, and I don't think Kingdom Hearts 3 has the momentum to catch up at this rate, but that's really good for such a niche genre that is RPGs, action RPGs, JRPGs, that sort of thing. They don't tend to sell nearly as well. 5 million, that's actually pretty good. And that actually sort of brings me to another sort of discussion that I wanted to talk about a little bit today. Speaking of Kingdom Hearts 3, how is Kingdom Hearts 3 doing? It's sold very well, and I checked out the score on Metacritic, and that kind of sparked this rant that I'm about to embark upon. So get your coffee ready. Kingdom Hearts 3, so far, on Metacritic, has a cumulative score of 84. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what Metacritic is, it essentially aggregates the scores from various other review sites and just kind of averages them out. And 84 is pretty good, actually, overall. But it made me wonder, what are some of the other games getting that I've really enjoyed over the years, or over this last year? Such as Dragon Quest XI is currently sitting at an 86. Octopath Traveler got an 83. Trails of Cold Steel 2 got an 81. Trails of Cold Steel, the original, also got about an 80. Ni no Kuni 2 got an 84. And Final Fantasy 15 got an 85. And that kind of started my brain a-thinking here a little bit. All these games got mid-80s, and mid-80s is really good. But I feel like some of these games, like Dragon Quest XI, was my game of the year, right? For last year, obviously. RPG of the year last year was actually Monster Hunter World, which I went ahead and checked that out on Metacritic, and that got a 90. And from a previous discussion, we actually talked a little bit about whether or not Monster Hunter World was an RPG or not, because I kind of feel like giving RPG of the year to Monster Hunter World felt kind of like giving like Best in Show at a dog show to a horse. You know, it's two completely different things. Sure, the horse might have been one heck of a horse, but at the end of the day, what's it doing at a dog show, right? It's a weird analogy, but I'm sticking with it. So it got a 90, which is awesome, because that game deserves a 90, because that number is completely irrespective of the fact that it is an RPG or not. But the fact is, if it is an RPG, and some people think that it is, if it is an RPG, it is one of the least RPG-like RPGs to ever RPG. And it's scored this high. And I decided to just go through Metacritic over the last year or so to find out, when is the last time that an RPG that I consider an RPG, or a JRPG even, when's the last time one of those broke 90? Does anybody want to guess? Because I'll get there in a minute. Because as I was scrolling back page by page, chronologically from present all the way to early last year, I saw several games scrolling by that broke 90 in the RPG category. Most of them were actually Western RPGs and re-releases of very old RPGs. Until I finally came across Persona 5, which got a 93 in April of last year. It seems to me like people just don't really like JRPGs as much as they do other mediums, which is just really strange. What I think this smacks of, to me, is the fact that JRPGs are still 100% a niche genre, and that being reviewed by non-niche reviewers, by mainstream reviewers, and I hate to use that phrase, but mainstream reviewers don't give these games the appropriate... It sounds dumb, but I feel like they don't know how to enjoy a good RPG, and they wouldn't know what one was unless it came up and bit them on the ass, like Persona 5 did. Anyways, it just sort of is something that stuck in my mind when I was just kind of browsing earlier, and kind of got me a little riled up, and kind of also reminded me that that's exactly why I review RPGs. So at least somewhere out there in the world, there's one person, at least one person, doing it right. Because scores and numbers, honestly, they're pointless. Video games are such a subjective experience, and to try to quantify that feeling of playing a really good story is just stupid, in my opinion. Which is not to say it's stupid of other reviewers to do it, because I know that viewers really want numbers, and a lot of times you just got to do what's best for you and your channel or your publication or whatever. I just refuse, because by giving people numbers, you take away the nuance that comes from intelligent discussion. And that's kind of what I try to bring to the table, at least. Anyways, enough talking about myself. Let's talk about RPGs. We've got, thanks to that Nintendo Direct that came out on, what was it, just a few days ago. God, what day was that? Was that the 12th? Was that 5 days ago? Oh, I probably should have made a video about this sooner. Anyways, we got some new games that were announced, starting with Rune Factory 5, which is pretty awesome because I really enjoyed Rune Factory Frontier on the Nintendo Wii. That was a long time ago, obviously, but I liked it when it came out, and I haven't really played many of them since. I saw some handheld versions and just passed on them because, for one, I'm not a huge fan of handheld games, but also because I just feel like it didn't look the same. It didn't feel like, it felt like less of a action RPG and more like something that just didn't interest me. Nothing personal. But anyways, Rune Factory 5 has been announced, and because that's coming out, and I'm guessing it's not coming out on 3DS, because it seems like that console is slowly going by the wayside, we're finally going to get another console version of Rune Factory, which, you know, I am all for. Also, it was announced that Tokyo RPG Factory are working on a new game called Oninaki. And Oninaki is another action RPG, and because it's by Tokyo RPG Factory, who are sort of trying to recapture some of Square's former glory from the 16 and 32-bit era, I'm really hoping that they're going to try to draw inspiration from some of those classics that I love on the Super Nintendo, like Secret of Mana 2, or, you know, Seiken Densetsu 3, or Terranigma, hopefully, maybe? Can I get my hopes up? I don't know. Based on what I saw, probably not. And we'll be definitely keeping my eyes on this one. And then also there was an announcement of a new game by Platinum Games called Astral Chain, and it looks off the chain. Do people still say that? I don't think people still say that. It looks pretty good. It looks really cool, actually. Kind of a cyberpunk feel. I kind of don't think it looks like it's going to be very much of an RPG, if you can gauge such things from a trailer like what we saw. It looks like it follows some police officers, and they're like fighting these giant mutant demon things. Sounds like there's probably some political intrigue and stuff based on the dialogue that you kind of hear in the background. It could be really cool. I'm guessing it's going to be more Bayonetta, less Nier Automata, if that makes sense, based on what I saw. And then also we got a new announcement for a sort of new game. It's not a remaster. This is actually like a remake, a ground-up remake of Link's Awakening, which a lot of people are kind of conflicted on, and I can understand why. It looks kind of different. It's a very direct translation from the Game Boy version of the game based on what we've been able to see so far. Basically, screen for screen remake of the game. And I'm okay with that because I really liked Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. That said, it has that really simplistic visual style. I think there's a lot of people who are kind of disappointed by that, and I can totally understand where that's coming from. I'm holding off on my judgment on this because back in the early-ish 2000s, a Zelda game came out that I also wasn't really a huge fan of the way that it looked. I thought it would be childish and thought it was going to be bad kid stuff that I wouldn't like. And you guys obviously know by now that I'm talking about Wind Waker. And I was proven completely wrong by that game. And since then, I kind of decided that Nintendo, they've earned my trust, at least as far as a Zelda game goes, as long as it doesn't involve stylus mechanics, I will hold off my judgment, because they've never let me down since since Phantom Hourglass. But what do you guys think? Does that look bad? Does it look good? Do they have your trust? Are you cautiously optimistic? Or have you ever played it before? Have you played the original Link's Awakening? And how excited are you to play it for the first time, if not? So that was the last of the new announcements that they came out with, but we also got some ports that are coming to the Nintendo Switch, and some other localizations that we're finding out that we're getting. And I'll just start with Rune Factory 4, which was originally a 3DS game, is now making its way over to Switch. It might have been a DS game, I'm actually not sure. Like I said, it was on handheld and I didn't care, so I don't really know off the top of my head. But this is getting a port over to Switch, a remaster. It still doesn't look like anything I'm interested in based on the playstyle. Your mileage may vary. I hope this game appeals to somebody out there. Also, Deltarune is making its way over to Switch as well, according to that Nintendo update. And man, can I just say that for a Nintendo Direct, that was particularly awesome to sit through, because it was just RPG after RPG after action RPG after, it all felt sort of tangentially connected. And I think that there's a very good reason for that. Well, we'll talk about why that is in a minute. But before I do, there's a couple other ports. Specifically, Final Fantasy VII is coming to Nintendo Switch on March 26th. Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon, Everybody, is coming to Nintendo Switch on March 20th. And the funny thing during that, or maybe not very funny, I don't know, depending, it was only on the screen for like about 3 seconds. It was one of those sort of blink and you miss it sort of things during that Direct. Final Fantasy IX is actually already out on the Nintendo Switch. They announced it was coming out that day. So go get it if you're interested. In fact, well, there's some other pretty cool stuff in community news. I'll just go ahead and touch on that now. Final Fantasy VII, there's a mod out there right now that you should definitely go check out. They took some sort of neural network thing that it basically upscaled all the backgrounds for Final Fantasy VII, and they look way better than they ever did before. Kind of upscaled them and just looks so much better. Go check that out. I'll put a link in the video description. The big news that I was so excited to hear, and I think a lot of you were also really excited to hear, if you haven't already heard this, brace yourselves. Dragon Quest XI S Definitive Edition is making its way to the United States. And when it comes over, it's bringing with it the features that you guys have been dying for since they were announced for the 3DS. The 16-bit mode. You can play as the top-down 16-bit mode. So cool. They're including an orchestral version of the OST, which is fantastic, so some people can finally get what they've been wanting. Good for you guys. There's also going to be Japanese voiceover that is, in fact, making the jump over. I thought that when it came over, they may or may not include the Japanese voices, but they are, and that will make some people I know very happy, but also probably annoyed that they have to buy the game over again. And new stories for all of the main protagonists, which is music to my ears, because that is one thing that I said in my review of Dragon Quest XI that I really wanted, and we're gonna get it, and that makes me so happy. It's definitive in every way but one. Dragon Quest XI for Switch looks not very good. Based on the trailer, it looks like it's got some low resolution textures, and that totally makes sense because the Switch isn't exactly what I would call a powerhouse from a visual perspective. It feels like it's going to be definitive in just about every way, but visually. And that also leads me into the question that's on everybody's minds right now. Are these features going to be making their way over to the PlayStation 4 or the PC versions? Because a lot of people just don't want to buy the game over again, and I don't blame them. I mean, if it was just like a $10 DLC pack to make it the definitive edition, that would be pretty cool. I would really love to be able to go back and play these games, play this game over again specifically to experience the new stories. and get a better feel for the orchestral version of the soundtrack that we missed out on, that people were so up in arms about before. I'd like to see if there's any truth to that, you know, to see how much better that actually was. And I would also really like to see that 16-bit mode in action. That's a huge time investment all over again. I put over 100 hours into that game last time, and I really want to play it again. Well, so far, Square Enix says that they're undecided. And what that means to me is they have decided, but they're not going to tell you yet. What they're going to do is decide after they release the Switch version and after they've sold all that they're going to sell on the Nintendo Switch. Then they'll say, hey, you guys have been such good sports. Here's some DLC, or here's what else they might do. Instead of DLC, oh, here's the PS4 and the PC version that you have to repurchase at $60 a pop. I hope that's not what they do. I hope that that's not what they're going to do. But I'm so cynical these days. You never know. Maybe that's what they'll do. Anyways, Dragon Quest XI's I am hyped for. Answers a lot of questions that I had, raises a lot of other questions. And here is why I think they grouped in so much RPG news, because this was the Fire Emblem update, and they talked about Fire Emblem The Three Houses, which is coming out in July, on July 26th. And what they revealed about the Three Houses is that it's kind of Fire Emblem meets sort of like a Harry Potter Three Houses in a monastery sort of thing. I still don't really know enough about the game to decide whether or not I think it looks good. I mean, visually, it looks really cool. It looks visually pleasing. We'll just have to wait and get our hands on it before we decide if the game's any good or not, right? Also, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is getting a release in summer of 2019. And here's another one that I've been excited for a while, and that is Dragon Quest Builders 2 is making its way over to the States in July 12th, 2019. And did I say 2018 earlier? I sure hope I didn't. I should be getting used to 2019. Anyways, guys, it's been a long time since the last one. I'll just go ahead and say this. I'll leave you guys with today's question of the week. What is an RPG that you love, but you don't really hear anybody else talking about it? Tell me down in the comments below. That is the question of the week. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good day, everyone.